Hi, I'm the Guitar Trooper, YouTube's favorite old guy. It's Friday the 13th. Friday, May 13th, 1955, to be exact. Despite the unlucky reputation of Friday the 13th, this trip would prove to be fortuitous for an unknown but talented 29-year-old guitar-playing songwriter named Charles Edward Anderson Barry, who uses the familiar name Chuck as his first name, when he drives with a friend in a red Ford Country Squire wagon from St. Louis to Chicago to see some blues artists perform live. He sees several that weekend, but the main one he wants to see is Muddy Waters. He doesn't want just his autograph, he seeks assistance in getting a recording contract. Sure enough, after hearing Waters play at the Dewdrop Inn Lounge, Chuck is able to talk to him, and after a short conversation, Muddy Waters is moved to suggest that Chuck contact one of the owners of Muddy's contracted record label, Chess Records. Besides the owner's name and the office address, he tells Chuck that it opens at 9, but be there before 10 because that's when Leonard Chess arrives, and tell him Muddy Waters sent you. Monday, May 16th, 1955, 4750 South Cottage Grove Avenue, Chicago, Illinois. 1955 offices of Chess Records, 10 a.m. Chuck is across the street at a drugstore awaiting the arrival of Leonard Chess, one of the Chess Records owners. Chuck doesn't know exactly how to do this, but he knows one thing for sure. When Leonard Chess shows up for work, Chuck is going to, well, for lack of a more genteel term, ambush him and give him the sales pitch of a lifetime, bolstered by an endorsement from Muddy Waters. Leonard arrives on schedule, and Chuck hurries across the street. As it turns out, his pitch is successful, and the next Saturday, May 21st, 1955, is to be the first time that Chuck Berry steps into a recording studio as a solo artist. Saturday, May 21st, 1955, Universal Recording Studios, 46 East Walton Street, Chicago, 10 a.m. Chess Records, too small of an operation until 1956 to have its own studio, purchases studio time for Chuck's recording session at the state-of-the-art Universal Recording Studios. Chuck has brought a demo tape of 4 of his songs and has assembled his trio in the studio. Chuck Berry doing vocals and guitar, Johnny Johnson on piano, and Ebby Hardy on drums. According to a later account by Chuck, the trio plays the 4 songs for Leonard Chess and his brother Phil. There is one song that Leonard really likes, but it's not a blues song, but rather a rewritten adaptation of the lyrical style of a Bob Wills song called Ida Red that Chuck had rewritten and renamed to Ida May. Although Leonard likes the adaptation, he does not like the name. Ida May sounds too rural, he says. An editorial note here. There are 2 stories about how Maybellene came about as the name of Chuck Berry's adaptation. One account from piano player Johnny Johnson credits the name change to Leonard Chess, saying that Leonard noticed an empty Maybellene mascara box on the windowsill or the floor and decided to use a respelled version of the manufacturer to avoid any copyright infringement. The other story is from Chuck's biography, where he states that he renamed the song himself based upon a cow's name from a 3rd grade reader that he remembered from his childhood. I couldn't really validate either story, so I'm relating the first one here as it is repeated in 3 sources, and it also seems more credible that Leonard Chess would make the decision since he was the person who didn't like the use of Ida May. However, if any one of you has information on the true origin of the use of the name Maybellene, be my guest. Please feel free to post your reference. Now, back to the story. Glancing at a nearby windowsill, Leonard notices an empty Maybellene mascara box. Well, hell, let's just name the thing Maybellene. And so it was agreed. To achieve a heavier beat, Leonard Chess also calls in Willie Dixon to play bass and Jerome Green to play maracas. Take 1 is a good rehearsal, but neither Chuck nor Leonard are happy with it. The same thing happens for take 2, and 3, and 4, and without a break, the session continues for hours, yielding 36 live takes of the five-man ensemble playing the song with Chuck singing. Chuck has his Gibson ES350T at full output and his amplifier turned up loudly enough so that it produces distortion, a rarity in mid-50s guitar recordings, and which is quite noticeable during the solo guitar intro. By take 36, the fatigue is setting in, and the execution of the intro has become somewhat sloppy. During this entire session, the tape is rewound and restarted for each take, obliterating the prior recording. This left all of the preceding takes of Maybellene lost to history. The one that you hear on the recording today is take 36, recorded live without overdubs, and is the only surviving master recording from that session on May 21st, 1955. In July of 1955, Maybellene is released and immediately begins being misspelled in promotional materials using an I instead of E, just like the mascara. But that wasn't nearly as big a deal as what soon appeared on the record labels after the initial pressing. Remember that Maybellene started out as an adaptation solely concocted by Chuck Berry. At this time, Chuck has not realized that Chess Records has a reputation of not being, let's say, ethical. Much to Chuck's surprise, unlike the original 1955 pressing, an example of which he had not seen, and which correctly credited only him as writer, the record label that he sees in the later pressing lists writer credit for two other names besides his, an A. Freed and an R. Fratto, and he has never met them nor even heard of them. Who were these guys? And why were they listed as co-writers? As bizarre as it may sound, in the mid-50s, the practice of granting writer credit to non-participant writers, while clearly an encroachment on the rights of the true writer of a song, was perfectly legal. Pay-to-play, or payola, had been illegal since 1934, but was relatively easy to disguise. The easiest way for a label to assure such payments was to include the DJ as a co-writer of the song, so that the more the song was played, the more money that was siphoned off to the DJ. Well, disc jockeys weren't the only ones in on the scam, as record company executives also took advantage of the same stroke-of-the-pen cash cow, the most infamous of those being Morris Levy, owner of Roulette Records, who randomly attached his name as a co-writer on many Roulette singles. Well, anyway, it turns out that when Maybellene proved to be a potential chart success, Leonard Chess made a deal with popular New York DJ Alan Freed at the station WINS, giving him a split of writer credits on the song, provided that he would give it airplay. And that he did, on one particular night playing the song non-stop for 2 hours. And who, you may ask, was R. Fratto? Well, he wasn't a DJ. In fact, he wasn't directly associated with Chess Records, nor the recording industry, and in fact, had never even stepped foot into a recording studio. Russ Fratto, the owner of Victory Stationery, a print shop next door to the 4750 South Cottage Grove offices of Chess Records, had reportedly loaned money or provided printing services to the Chess brothers, or maybe it was just rent that was due. Bruce Pegg's book, Brown-Eyed Handsome Man, about Chuck Berry's career, identifies Fratto as the 4750's landlord. But irrespective of the reason, payment of some ilk was apparently due to Fratto from Chess Records. The solution? Simply make him a co-writer of Maybellene, therefore giving him a cut of the writer royalties every time the popular record was played. Having 3 writers on a recording means that the royalties were split 3 ways, giving the actual writer only a third of what he was due. Realizing what was going on, Chuck Berry finally filed a lawsuit, which he won in 1986 to regain full royalties, although it is said that he never was fully recompensed for the early royalties due. Still, there were subsequent pressings, notably those from Sugar Hill Records beginning in 1979, that continued to list on the label both of the fraudulent co-writers. Chuck Berry holds the title of being the first black artist in the U.S. to be successful at playing his own music nationwide, and is credited with being a rock and roll pioneer and an inspiration as well to the artists who followed him. But he had personal life issues due to experiences he had where he was drastically underpaid for performances and instances where a manager cashed checks made out to Chuck. His business acumen left a lot to be desired. In fact, he insisted on being paid in advance in cash for his personal appearances, which eventually led to an IRS tax evasion conviction. An incident in 1961 involving a 14-year-old girl that he allegedly hired to work in the club that he operated in Missouri led to a conviction of transporting a minor across state lines for immoral purposes and an assessment of a 5-year prison sentence. He was also notoriously difficult to play with, as his show set and presentation was unpredictable, and his normal operating mode on tours was to travel alone and use local bands with whom he had never played with before, using a different band at each different venue. This led to shows that were chaotic, rough, many times unsatisfying to his fans. Well, in spite of all this, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1986, and was crowned a rock and roll pioneer. Chuck Berry played his final concert on October 15, 2014, just 3 days before his 88th birthday at St. Louis Blueberry Hill, and died just over 2 years later on March 18, 2017, at the age of 90. Hey guys, thanks for watching this short history, and I hope that you enjoy the video. If you did, please do me a favor and click on that thumbs up like icon, it's usually over there, and leave a comment to let me know what you think. You can also use comments to suggest video subject matter regarding pop music and pop music culture from the 1950s through the 1970s. A great thing that you can also do to support the channel is just share the video with your friends. Click on the icon that looks like an arrow and pick the destination person. Help us expand the audience. Speaking of supporting the channel, this would be a great time to subscribe. If you're not yet a subscriber, it's easy and it's free, and it lets YouTube know that you support the channel. Just click on the subscribe button that's on the main channel page, or click on that big purple icon that appears on the screen toward the end of this video. And be sure to select the top notification bell on the drop-down menu so that you will be notified whenever I post new content for the public. If you would like the opportunity to see content a few days earlier when it is viewable only to channel members, you can upgrade your subscription to become a channel member. Just click on the join icon and follow the instructions. It's not a free thing to upgrade, but it's as dirt cheap as YouTube would let me make it. Again, thank you so much for watching.